The night was cold, and the wind outside howled like it was alive. Rain tapped against the metal walls of the small workshop where Ethan lived. Far from the main city, he sat alone at his workbench, fixing a broken drone engine under a dull yellow light. His hands were greasy, his eyes tired. And there was nothing special about the evening until someone knocked on his door. It wasn't a loud knock. It was soft, weak, like someone barely had the strength to do it. At first, Ethan thought he imagined it, but then it came again, tap-tap, slower this time. He stood up, confused. No one ever visited him. Not here, not in the middle of a storm. Cautiously, he walked to the door, grabbing a metal rod just in case. He opened the door a few inches and froze. There, standing in the rain, was a girl, but she wasn't human. She looked young. Maybe in her early 20s if she were human. Her skin was pale purple, almost glowing under the rain. Her silver hair was soaked and stuck to her face. Her eyes, large, bright, and trembling, looked right into his. She wore a torn, thin blanket over her shoulders, and nothing on her feet. Her toes were bleeding, leaving red marks on his doorstep. Her lips moved slightly before she spoke. Her voice was shaky, like a whisper lost in the wind. "If you don't take me in," she said, "they'll take my unborn children." Ethan blinked, not sure he heard her right. His brain tried to process her words. Was she talking nonsense? Was she even pregnant? She looked too thin, too weak. Her body shook from the cold, and her eyes begged him to decide quickly. Sirens echoed in the distance, the kind used by patrol ships or search parties. Red lights flashed across the sky far away, scanning buildings, moving fast toward his area. "I'll leave if you say so," she whispered. "Just don't let them find me standing here." Ethan didn't understand what was happening, but something inside him, maybe instinct, maybe something else, made him step aside and open the door wider. "Come in," he said. She hesitated for just a second, then walked in slowly, limping. Her legs were shaking, and she nearly collapsed before Ethan caught her arm and helped her to the couch. He shut the door and locked it, pulling down the blackout curtains so no light would escape. For a moment, the room was silent, except for the sound of her breathing. Ethan stood there, looking at the strange girl on his couch. Her skin had bruises, her lips were dry, and her arms were covered in small cuts like she had crawled through metal or barbed wire. He grabbed a towel and handed it to her. She took it without a word and wiped her face and arms, trying not to drip water on his floor. Then she looked up at him again. "You opened the door," she said softly. "That means you are now part of this?" "Part of what?" Ethan asked, still confused. "Who are you?" "My name is Kayla," she said. "I'm from the Zelari race, or what's left of it." Ethan had heard of the Zelari once or twice. A peaceful race with rare DNA. They weren't warriors or criminals, just different. Some said their genetics could do things others couldn't: heal faster, adapt to any planet, even survive diseases that killed other species, and some people wanted that DNA at any cost. "I escaped," Kayla continued. "They used me like I was just a body, a vessel, to carry what they wanted." Ethan didn't say anything. He could see the pain in her face, the shame she tried to hide but couldn't. She wasn't lying. Not with those eyes, not with those wounds. "I don't know who they are exactly," she added, "but they're rich, powerful, and cruel. They call themselves breeders. They collect females like me, force pregnancies, sell the children like items." Ethan felt a cold anger grow inside him. He had seen corruption, yes, but this was worse. It was slavery, biological slavery, and now it was at his door. "I'm not even sure I'm pregnant yet," she said, her voice almost too quiet to hear, "but they think I am, and that makes me." Valuable sirens came closer outside, bright lights flashing past his windows. Kayla curled into the couch, covering herself with the towel, her body tense. Ethan turned off the last light in the room and sat across from her. "You can stay here for now," he said. "But if they're looking for you, they'll come here too, eventually." "I know," Kayla whispered, "but you opened the door. And that means something." Ethan didn't know what it meant. Not yet. But as the sirens passed and the night grew quieter, he knew one thing for sure: his life had changed the moment he opened that door. Maybe he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Or maybe it was the start of something bigger, something worth fighting for. And Kayla, the girl with silver eyes and a broken voice, lay there in his home, trusting a human she had never met, because, for once, someone had simply said, "Come in." The rain continued to fall outside, but inside that small metal house, something new had begun. Something that would shake the galaxy. The room was quiet, but Ethan's thoughts were loud. He couldn't sleep. Not with a stranger and alien girl sleeping on his couch. He sat on the floor, back against the wall, watching the soft rise and fall of Kella's chest as she slept. Her body still shivered from the cold, even under the warm blanket he had given her outside. The rain had stopped, but the clouds still hung heavy in the sky. Somewhere out there, powerful people were looking for her, hunting her like a lost object, not a living person. Ethan had never been involved in anything like this. He just fixed old drones, repaired delivery bots, and minded his own business. But now, things were different. The next morning, the smell of food filled the room. Kayla sat on the edge of the couch, her hands wrapped around a warm mug. She sipped slowly, like someone who hadn't tasted real food in days. Ethan had made her a simple breakfast: eggs, toast, and strong coffee. She looked at the plate, then at him. "You cook too?" she asked, voice still weak but softer than last night. "I live alone," Ethan said. "So I had to learn." She nodded, eyes lowering again. There was something in the way she held the mug, like she wasn't sure it was really hers. Ethan sat down across from her and asked, "Do you want to tell me more about what happened?" Kayla looked up, her silver eyes no longer wide with panic. Now they held something else: caution, pain, and the beginning of trust. "They kept us in white rooms," she said slowly. "Bright lights, cold floors. They took blood every day. Ran tests, poked needles into us. They said it was for science, for survival, but I knew better." She paused, her fingers tightened on the mug. Ethan waited, not saying a word. "I saw girls disappear," she whispered. "Some came back pregnant. Some didn't come back at all. The guards wore masks, so we couldn't see their faces. They spoke numbers, not names. I was subject 72. Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't understand how something like this could happen in a galaxy full of advanced laws and so-called peace. But deep down, he knew. The powerful always found ways to hide the ugly things they did. "How did you escape?" he asked quietly. Kayla took a deep breath. "One night, there was a power outage. Just a flicker. The guards panicked. That's when I ran. I broke through a maintenance door and climbed through vents. I didn't stop until I reached the surface. My feet were already bleeding, but I kept running. I didn't even know where I was going. Just away." Ethan leaned back, letting the silence stretch for a moment. Then he asked, "Why did you come to my door?" "I didn't choose," she said. "I just followed the smallest street, the darkest building. You didn't have lights on, no signs. I thought maybe it was empty or safe. I knocked because I couldn't run anymore." Ethan didn't know what to say. He was just a mechanic, not a hero, but here she was, sitting in his home, drinking his coffee, sharing a story that sounded like something out of a horror file the news networks would never report. "I don't want to bring danger to your life," Kayla said suddenly. "I can leave if you want me to." "You already did more than anyone else ever has." Ethan shook his head. "If I let you go out there, they'll find you and they'll take you back to that place. She looked surprised. "You believe me?" "I don't need proof," he said. "I saw your feet, your bruises. I heard your voice last night. No one fakes pain like that." Kayla looked down at her mug again. Her hands were shaking a little, not from fear, but from something else. "Maybe relief. I don't know what to do next," she whispered. "I don't even know if I'm pregnant yet, but if I am, they'll come after me harder because they don't just want my body anymore. They want what's growing inside me." Ethan's eyes darkened. "Then we'll make sure they don't find you again." Kayla looked up at him, blinking slowly. Her voice cracked when she said, "Why are you helping me?" He took a breath before replying, "Because someone should have." A long time ago, for the first time, she smiled. It was small, almost invisible, but it was real. She reached across the table and touched his hand. Her fingers were cold, delicate. But the gesture was strong. "You opened the door," she said again. "That makes you my protector." Ethan didn't know what that meant in her culture, but it felt heavy. Not like a job, but like a vow, a bond, something sacred from that moment on. The air between them changed. It was no longer just about hiding. It was about surviving together. Kayla trusted him, and now he had to live up to that trust. The storm outside was over, but a bigger storm was coming. Ethan could feel it deep in his bones, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't running away from it. He was standing in front of it, beside her. The sky above the scrapyard was gray and heavy. Like it was holding its breath, Ethan stood outside with a welding torch in one hand, pretending to work on a broken drone frame. His eyes, however, kept watching the road beyond the fence. Every few minutes, his fingers twitched toward the small communicator in his pocket, ready to warn Kayla if anything looked wrong inside the metal workshop. Kayla stayed hidden beneath a loose panel in the floor. It was a space Ethan used to store spare parts. But now it had become her temporary shelter. She sat with her knees to her chest, listening for every sound above. Her breathing was slow, but her heart beat hard in her chest. Then it happened. A loud hum filled the air. Not from any local ship, but something bigger, smoother, faster, a sleek black patrol cruiser descended from the clouds, its engines almost silent. It hovered above the scrapyard, casting a long shadow over Ethan's shop. He didn't look up. Too Fast didn't flinch. Instead, he kept working, as if nothing was wrong. But inside, he was already calculating a dozen ways to lie, to misdirect, to protect. The patrol ship touched down with a soft thud. The side hatch opened, and 4 figures stepped out. They wore black armor with mirrored visors, their movements sharp and silent. These were not regular officers. They were private enforcers, mercenaries paid by the corporations who wanted Kayla back. "Are you Ethan Barlow?" one of them asked, voice cold through a voice modulator. "Yeah," Ethan replied, not looking up. "What's this about?" "We're tracking a fugitive female," the lead enforcer said. "She's dangerous, possibly armed, and carrying stolen genetic material." Ethan raised his eyebrows and wiped sweat from his forehead. "You think someone like that came through a junkyard?" "Her blood trail says otherwise," the enforcer replied, stepping closer. "We detected signs of injured movement near this facility." Ethan felt a chill. He remembered Kella's bleeding feet, the red drops on the floor. He thought he had cleaned everything, but maybe he had missed something outside. "I cut myself yesterday," Ethan said, showing a fresh scrape on his arm. "Old pipe got me good." The enforcer scanned it with a small handheld device. It beeped once, confirming human DNA, but the officer didn't look convinced. He turned to his team, searched the premises. Ethan stepped forward, trying to keep his voice calm. "This is private property." Oh. The officer didn't even glance at him. "We have override permission from Sector Command." 2 of the soldiers entered the shop, their boots heavy on the floor. Kayla could hear them above, moving closer, their scanners buzzing as they checked each corner. She held her breath, pressing her body flat against the cold metal beneath. Her trying not to cry, Ethan stayed near the door, heart pounding. He knew they'd find the trapdoor, even if it was hidden under old parts. So he did the only thing he could. He started talking. "You guys ever hear of the Black Wind?" he asked suddenly. The enforcer stopped. "What?" "The ship," Ethan said, walking toward a pile of scrap near the wall. "It comes through here once in a while, silent as a whisper. Pulls half my tools off the walls with its gravity field, leaves nothing but scorch marks and broken things." The enforcers turned toward him. Confused, the scanning officer paused, unsure whether to laugh or arrest him. Ethan kept going. "Some say it's a ghost ship. Some say it's military tech gone rogue. Either way, it doesn't like strangers." Poking around, the enforcer narrowed his eyes. "You're wasting our time." "Maybe," Ethan said with a shrug, "but maybe not." For a moment, no one moved. Then the scanner inside the shop made a long beep. Everyone turned. The officer stepped forward. Reading something under the floor, Kayla's eyes widened, her hands trembling. She prepared to run. Even if it meant death, she couldn't go back. Not to that place. Not to those hands. "Open it," the officer ordered. But before his men could reach the trapdoor, something unexpected happened. The entire yard shook. Not from an explosion, but from an engine massive, old, and furious. From above, a massive, rusted cargo hauler flew over the area, way too low. So close that its magnetic field pulled the metal from Ethan's shelves and sent bolts flying. The soldiers ducked. One of them screamed. The patrol ship's alarms blared as it struggled to keep balance. Ethan used the moment. He hit a button on his wrist, device something he had rigged years ago. A smoke burst launched from the back of the yard, filling the area with thick, gray smoke. Alarms rang louder now, mixed with shouts and orders. In the chaos, Ethan dropped to the floor, pulled open the trapdoor, and whispered, "Now, Kayla, now." She climbed out fast, holding the small pack he gave her. Together, they ran out the back entrance of the shop. The smoke shielded them, and by the time the enforcers cleared it, they were gone, miles away. Ethan's old hoverbike sped across the rocky plains. Kayla held tight behind him, her head buried in his back. She didn't speak, didn't cry, just held on like her life depended on it. Which it did. "You okay?" Ethan shouted over the wind. "Yes," she said. "How did you do all that?" "I've had shady people snooping around before," he replied. "Just never one's looking for a pregnant alien girl." Kayla let out a laugh, short and tired, but real. "You're crazy," she whispered. "Maybe," Ethan said. "But you're safe for now." Behind them, the patrol ship rose into the sky again, scanning for them in every direction, but they were already gone, already on the move, and the hunt had just begun. Ethan's hoverbike rattled as it sped through the cracked plains. The wind howled past them, full of dust and broken leaves from the dead trees nearby. Kayla held on tightly, her fingers curled into the folds of his jacket. She didn't speak, not yet. Her mind was still spinning from what had just happened. After nearly an hour, they reached an old, abandoned fueling station hidden in a canyon. Ethan had used it in the past to hide stolen tech or to camp during long repair trips. The scanners here didn't work anymore. The signal blockers still had enough juice to keep them hidden for a while. He shut the bike off, and the silence that followed was almost too loud. Kayla slid off the back, her legs weak from the ride. She leaned against a wall and looked around. Breathing hard, the sun was low, casting long red shadows across the canyon floor. "We're safe?" she asked. "For now," Ethan replied, unlocking the old door to the station's underground chamber. "But not for long. We need to move again soon." Once the patrols clear out, the underground room was dusty but intact. There was a small power cell for lights, an old bed, and a few ration packs sealed tight. Ethan handed her a water pouch and sat down, wiping sweat from his forehead. Kayla took a few sips, then sat beside him on the floor. Her eyes stared forward, like she was watching something far away. I've never seen someone lie to enforcers like that, she said softly. Most people are too afraid to even open the door. Ethan looked at her, then gave a small shrug. Maybe I'm just tired of being afraid. There was a pause. Then she turned toward him, her silver eyes brighter in the soft light. You didn't just open the door, Ethan. You're risking your life. Over and over again. He didn't answer right away. He looked at the ground, then back at her. I didn't plan this, Kayla. I didn't wake up one day and think, I'll hide a hunted alien girl and fight off mercenaries. But when you knocked, I saw someone who didn't deserve what was chasing her. Kayla swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the water pouch. Most of my people are gone, not because of war or disease, but because others wanted our DNA, our bodies, our children. They think we're just vessels. Ethan clenched his jaw. You're not a vessel. You're a person. She looked at him, really looked at him. What if I told you? I don't want to just survive anymore. I want to fight back. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You? Fight. She nodded slowly. I was trained once, before the labs. My mother taught me how to use biotools, how to access tech, how to disrupt drones, but I never had a reason to use it until now. Ethan stood up. Walking to a nearby crate, he opened it and pulled out a map made of thin, flexible glass. With a few taps, it glowed to life, showing the sectors of the planet and key routes leading off-world. I have a plan, he said, but it's dangerous. We need a ship, not a junker, not a courier, but something that can fly fast and long without getting noticed. Kayla stood beside him, her eyes scanning the map. You know where to find one. There's an old shipyard in the dead wastes, Ethan replied. Most people say it's haunted or cursed, but really, it's just abandoned by the corporations full of broken warships, freight haulers, even stealth-class cruisers, Keelas. Lips curved into a small smile. Then that's where we go. Ethan nodded, then paused. There's something else, too. Something I've never told anyone. She looked at him, curious. What is it? Ethan tapped a small mark on his wrist. Hidden under a dirty cloth band, it glowed faintly blue. I used to work for them. Kella's smile vanished. The enforcers. No, Ethan said quickly. Before that, I was a tech assistant for sector security. I fixed patrol drones, installed tracking beacons, built surveillance kits. I saw what they did to prisoners. 2 biological assets I didn't like. So I left. She was quiet for a moment, then whispered, That's why you knew how to fool their scanners? Ethan nodded. And that's why I know their ships. Their routes, their weak points. Kayla stepped closer, her voice low and strong. Then let's make this more than just an escape. Ethan looked at her, surprised. What do you mean? I mean, she said, let's steal a ship, disappear into the stars, and when the time is right, let's come back, not to hide, but to expose everything they've done. Ethan didn't say anything, but his eyes said yes. They spent the rest of the evening preparing. Kayla helped rewire the signal blockers. Ethan packed the tools and leftover supplies. They worked side by side like they had known each other for years, not just a few days. That night, Kayla sat near the old control panel, watching the stars through a cracked skylight. Ethan lay nearby, trying to rest, but not asleep. Do you think I'll ever be free? She asked quietly. Ethan opened his eyes. You already are, she smiled. This time, bigger, real, then maybe one day I can be more than just someone who ran away. You already are, he repeated. "You're the reason I'm still here." Outside, the wind had quieted. The stars above blinked gently, as if listening. Inside that broken station, two fugitives. Prepared not just to run, but to rise. Together, the dead wastes were as lifeless as the name promised. A land of broken metal, sandstorms, and silence. Once a thriving industrial sector, now nothing more than scattered wreckage and rusting machines. Buried under years of dust, few dared to come here, and even fewer left. Ethan's old hover truck crawled across the cracked ground. Its engine sputtering but holding, Kayla sat beside him, her silver eyes scanning the horizon. A black scarf covered her face to block the dust, though the wind still found its way through every gap in the vehicle. "There it is," Ethan said, pointing toward a jagged cliff in the distance. Just behind it, half buried in sand and rock, was an enormous structure, an old ship hangar the size of a small town. Bent beams poked out like broken bones, but the walls still stood. Mostly, Kayla narrowed her eyes. "Are you sure the ship's in there?" "Not just any ship," Ethan replied. "A stealth-class scout, fast, silent, untraceable. It was part of a failed secret project. I was on the team that helped bury it here." They reached the hangar entrance and stopped the truck. The silence was deep, almost too deep. Not even wind dared to whistle through this place. Ethan stepped out first, checking the ground, making sure there were no sensors or traps still active. Kayla followed, walking carefully through the shadows of the dead metal forest. Her feet were stronger now, her eyes sharper. The fear that once clung to her was slowly being replaced by something else. Purpose. Inside the hangar, rows of ships stood like forgotten gods, silent and covered in dust. Ethan walked with steady steps, counting, remembering, until he stopped in front of a dark, sleek vessel, smaller than the others. But with smooth curves and no visible seams, it looked more like a living creature than a ship. "This is it," he whispered, brushing his hand across its surface. The Nightwing. Kayla stepped closer, her hand touching the hull. A low vibration responded to her fingers, like the ship recognized her touch. She looked at Ethan, surprised. "It's alive. It uses organic tech interface," Ethan explained. "It bonds with the pilot, feels what they feel, acts like an extension of your body. That's why the project was shut down. Too unpredictable." Kayla smiled. "Sounds perfect." For us, they climbed aboard through a hidden hatch. Inside, the cockpit lit up slowly, systems waking one by one. The air smelled like old circuits and dried oil, but the ship was clean, untouched for years. Kayla sat in the pilot seat, and the ship reacted immediately, wrapping her arms in soft interface bands that connected to her pulse and mind. "It likes you," Ethan said, half joking. Kayla laughed. "Good, because I'm not going back." They spent the next few hours reactivating the power core. Ethan crawled through maintenance tunnels, rerouted fuel lines, and bypassed old security locks. Kayla helped where she could, her hands learning quickly, her mind sharp. By nightfall, the Nightwing was ready. Ethan stared at it from the outside, still not believing it was real. "We actually did it," he said. Kayla joined him, holding a small bag of supplies and a weapon she found inside the hangar storage room. "Now we fly," she said. "And then we strike back." But just as they started loading the last of their gear, a sharp sound broke the silence, a soft mechanical beep from Ethan's wristband. His eyes widened. "They found us," he said. Kayla froze. "Already?" "Attract. The old emergency beacon," he muttered. "I forgot this place had one buried deep in the floor. It activated when we restored power, far in the distance." A red dot appeared in the sky, then another, and another. Patrol ships, fast and angry, coming straight for the dead wastes. They had minutes at most. Ethan ran to the ship and started the startup sequence. The Nightwing responded fast. Humming with energy, Kayla jumped into the pilot's seat, fingers ready, tell me where to go. She said, no. Ethan replied, climbing in beside her. I'll fly this time. You cover the shields. The hatch closed with a hiss. The engines flared to life. Dust blew in every direction. Rusted crates rolled across the hangar. The patrol ships drew closer. Now visible as black darts against the blood-red sky, Ethan gritted his teeth. Here we go. The Nightwing rose into the air like a ghost. Silent and smooth, it shot through the hangar roof, smashing old beams aside, just as the first enemy ship fired. The Nightwing tilted and spun, dodging the blast with almost no effort. Kayla activated the defense systems. A shimmering energy wave surrounded the ship, deflecting to incoming plasma shots. Ethan pushed the ship harder, faster than he had ever flown before. The controls felt alive under his fingers. As if the ship was learning him too. They're locking on, Kayla shouted. Eyes focused on the rear scanner. I see them, Ethan replied. But they're not ready for this. He tapped a button on the console, and the ship disappeared. Not exploded, not hit, just gone. Cloaked completely, silent and invisible. Flying high above the enemy's scanning range, Kayla looked around, stunned. We're cloaked. Fully, Ethan grinned. They'll search the entire wasteland and find nothing. They flew high into the night sky, leaving behind smoke, confusion, and questions. Kayla sat back, heart racing. And then she laughed, full and bright. The sound echoing inside the cockpit. We stole a ghost ship, she said. And now we're ghosts too. Ethan smiled, but his eyes were serious. Not for long, Kayla. One day soon, they'll know exactly who we are, and far behind them. In the broken skeleton of the dead wastes, the patrols searched for shadows. But Kayla and Ethan had already become something more. They had become the storm. The Nightwing floated in the deep black of space. Invisible and silent, a ghost among stars. It drifted past, destroyed satellites, ancient wrecks, and the remains of forgotten wars. Kayla sat in the pilot's seat, her fingers resting on the smooth interface. Her breathing was calm, her mind focused. The ship obeyed her thoughts now fast. Smooth, alive. Ethan stood near the rear console, checking the power levels, weapon charges, and stealth fields. He had never flown anything like this before. The ship didn't need orders. It responded to intention, not just controls. It felt more like sailing a living shadow than piloting a machine. They were headed toward a small moon known only by rebels and smugglers. It had no name, just coordinates, hidden in a red nebula. The moon held a small resistance outpost, one of the last places where people still believed in freedom, still fought against the powers that hunted people like Kayla. Kayla looked out through the glass, her eyes fixed on the stars. I used to think space was just cold and empty, she whispered, but now it feels different. Ethan glanced at her. Because you're not running anymore, she nodded. Now we're choosing where to go. The ship approached the moon, and a signal pinged on the screen. Ethan entered the code he received years ago. Back when he thought he'd never need it, a moment later, a landing beacon appeared, hidden beneath rock and dust. Guiding them down, the landing was smooth. The ship touching the moon's surface like a feather. As the hatch opened, a gust of warm air rushed in, carrying the scent of burned metal, oil, and fire, the scent of rebellion. They stepped out and were greeted by armed guards wearing mismatched armor, patched with old parts and scraps. But their eyes were sharp, and they recognized Ethan at once. Didn't think we'd see you again, one of them said, lowering his rifle. Ethan gave a half smile. Didn't think I'd come back either. Kayla stepped forward, and the guards stared at her in silence. They weren't used to seeing Zellery up close, not free ones, at least. She's with me, Ethan said. And she's the reason I'm here. The guards looked at each other, then nodded. They led them into the underground base, an old mining facility turned rebel hideout. The walls were rough, the lights flickering, but the place had heart. People worked in silence, repairing drones, building weapons, and scanning space for threats inside the command room. An older woman stood at the center, her arm replaced by a sleek, cybernetic limb. Her hair was silver, her voice strong. "You brought her," she said to Ethan. Not surprised, but serious. "You know her?" Ethan asked, confused. "We've been tracking the project that took her." The woman said, "Project Womb Nest. They're creating a secret class of hybrid beings using captured females from rare species. Her name came up months ago, but we lost the trail." Kayla stepped forward, her voice steady. "They wanted my children. Not for love or family, but for power. They see me as a factory, not a mother." The room went quiet. Then the woman stepped closer and placed a hand on Kella's shoulder. "Then let's make sure they regret it." Ethan watched the exchange, feeling something shift in the room for the first time since this all began. Kayla wasn't just a fugitive, she was something more: proof, inspiration, fire. That night, they sat around a table with resistance leaders, planning the next steps. Kayla shared everything she remembered: the facility layout, the codes, the people, even the face of one scientist who used to speak kindly but injected her with tracking agents when she slept. "We can't just fight them head-on," said one of the rebels. "They have hundreds of ships, labs across dozens of planets, and private armies." Ethan nodded. "Then we don't fight fair. We expose them. We leak every file, every secret, every horror. We let the galaxy see the truth," Kayla added, "and when they come for us again, we'll be ready." Over the next few days, the base became a storm of activity. Techs worked non-stop, slicing into stolen databases, building scramblers, and modifying the Nightwing with new cloaking upgrades and signal bouncers. Ethan and Kayla trained with the rebels, learning how to fight, how to sabotage, how to survive in a war that never made the headlines. Kayla moved like someone born for this. Her body remembered how to bend, jump, and strike. Her hands, once trembling from fear, now held tools and weapons with certainty. Ethan watched her with quiet admiration, not just for her strength, but for how far she had come. One night, as they stood on the surface of the moon, watching a nearby star blink out in the distance, Kayla turned to Ethan. "They said my body wasn't mine." She said, "They said I was weak, broken, too soft to escape." He looked at her. "And now?" "Now I'm something they didn't see coming," she replied. Ethan smiled, then gently placed his hand over hers. "You're not alone anymore." She didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned her head on his shoulder. The silence between them wasn't empty, it was full of things unspoken, full of trust and something new. They stood there for a long time. Two survivors looking at the galaxy, not with fear, but with fire in their hearts. The Nightwing waited behind them, ready, and the war had only just begun. Galaxy didn't shake when it began. There was no explosion, no loud warning, no screaming signal across the stars, just a quiet upload. One small rebel server pushing out a file, then another and another. Within minutes, the networks lit up. And the truth, Kella's truth, was no longer a secret. Screens across spaceports, markets, and planetary councils began to buzz with images of the breeding labs. Footage from hidden cameras showing rows of alien women locked in sterile cages, silent and afraid, logs with timestamps, medical files, lists of buyers, and black market deals spilled out for all to see. Project Womb Nest was exposed. No longer a whisper or a rumor, but a headline that couldn't be buried in the rebel base. Kayla stood in front of the screen, watching the waves ripple across every star system. Her face was calm, but her eyes burned with emotion. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice. Ethan entered the room, dust on his jacket, a quiet grin on his face. "It's spreading faster than we thought," he said. "People are asking questions. Even senators." Kayla turned to him. Good. She said, let them feel the shame of their silence. But exposure alone wouldn't stop the ones in power. Already, strike teams were being sent to clean up. Silence witnesses, erase evidence. The war had gone from hidden to open. And that made things even more dangerous. The rebel base sent the Nightwing out again, Kayla and Ethan at the helm. Their mission, find the last surviving Zelari women trapped in off-world sites and bring them to safety before the enemy could erase them. Their first target was a facility hidden under a luxury resort on the planet Ventari Prime. The guests above thought they were bathing in hot springs, never knowing that beneath their feet, innocent lives were being drained. The Nightwing dropped silently through the atmosphere, cloaked and fast. Kella's hands moved with sharp grace, guiding the ship like it was part of her. Ethan sat beside her, tracking defense patterns and preparing the escape route when they breached the underground chamber. It wasn't with guns, was with speed. Ethan disabled the locks while Kayla ran through the hallways. Calling out in her native tongue, the Zelari women inside looked up in disbelief. Some wept. Some reached through the bars. All of them too used to broken promises. You're free. Now, Kayla whispered, breaking the last lock. No one owns you. They evacuated 27 survivors that day. Each one carried pain in their eyes, but hope in their hands. The galaxy had started to notice, and now it couldn't look away. Each rescue mission added more strength to the cause. The rebel network grew, silent supporters rising on every planet. And behind every whisper, every message, one name kept returning: Kayla. To some, she was a symbol of resistance. To others, she was a miracle that proved the system could be broken. But to Ethan, she was still the same girl who had knocked on his door, shaking, scared, and alone. Weeks passed. The Nightwing became a ghost story among the corporate fleets. They called it the Shadow Wom ship. Some claimed it could disappear into nothing. Others swore it could hack defense systems before anyone blinked, but none of them could catch it. One evening, after another mission, Kayla and Ethan sat in the Nightwing, floating above a blue-green planet where another Zelari colony had been found and freed. The stars shimmered outside, peaceful and endless. Kayla looked at Ethan, her voice soft. I used to think no one would ever care about us. Not really. He turned to her, and now. She smiled. Now I know one person was enough to change everything. Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, round device. He placed it in her hand. It was warm, glowing faintly blue. What is this? She asked. A safety key. He said, it's synced to the Nightwing systems if anything ever happens to me. You'll have full control. She's yours now too. Kayla stared at the device, then at him. I don't want to do this without you. You won't have to, he said. Not as long as I'm breathing. Their fingers touched, and for a moment, the universe felt still. They didn't need promises, or titles, or grand declarations. What they had was built in the silence between battle cries, in the gentle moments. Between storms later, as they prepared to jump to another system, Kayla sat in the pilot seat again, her hand on the controls, her eyes on the stars. Ethan stood beside her, looking ahead, ready. He asked, she nodded. Let's go find the next Kajand, break it, and with that, the Nightwing vanished into the stars once more. Not as a machine, but as a legend, wherever there was silence. It brought a voice, wherever there was pain. It brought a shield, and wherever there was darkness, Kayla and Ethan brought the light.